So where were we? That's right, we were working on the cockpit. I was going to show you how to do the photo etch, and I screwed it up so badly that I didn't dare show it on camera. I have, however, managed to salvage my my near miserable failure with the harnesses, as I believe I showed them briefly in a previous video, but you can see there now they are painted, or at least the base coat is painted. I have to paint the buckles yet. I painted them with, it calls for XF55 deck tan, and I didn't have any. I had some that I had mixed with gray for another project. I'm not sure what it was for. So I added a little bit of XF57 buff to create this kind of appropriate looking color. Also, I believe I showed in a previous video the armor plate behind the seat, which I had masked off but hadn't gotten around to painting. Well, as you can see, it is now painted. The areas underneath the masking are still interior green, but the head cushion and there's some mechanical detail on the back that's all now flat black. As it is, I'm pretty much... I think I'm finished with the cockpit parts, and most of the interior, in fact. I believe I'm pretty much ready to button this thing up, with the exception of one part, which is the... where did it go? There it is. Step 19 in the assembly instructions, which is assembly of the oil cooler and radiator channel. Which should be interesting because it does have some photo etch to it, and some interesting design features. Like it'll require that we use some pins and create some hinges and whatnot. So that should be interesting. So we might get a chance to finally get to look at this thing. This is my my Etchmate. I've mentioned it previously, but we haven't really had a chance to show it off yet. So, like I said, I think we're going to get a chance to do that in this step. In any event, let's dig out our box o' parts. I should really have organized this a little better before getting started on this. But it looks like most of what we're going to use is on runner R. So let's see if we can find runner R. That's not it. 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 There it is. Just to confirm. Yes, we have found runner R. I think everything that we need is on here. I'm just going to double check the instructions. Alright. So yeah, like I said, looks like everything we're going to need, all the plastic parts anyway, are on runner R11. We will need a nut, a couple of magnets, some of our photo etch parts. What else? And a pin, I believe. There's a hinge, a working hinge in this design, so it should be interesting to assemble. So you can see here we've got our runner of parts. This is runner R, which has all the radiator parts, radiator intakes, some external body panels, the prop, both halves, the prop spinner, and a few other odds and ends that I don't quite recognize. Now the instructions are calling for the first part to be part R5. Now the instructions are also saying that we need to place one of our magnets. Whoa. These are our magnets. There's about 12, 15 of them, and 3 different sizes. Now this is calling for one of the smallest ones. So very carefully, taking one of the small ones, and we're going to have to super glue it in place. So I'm just going to add a little puddle of super glue, much like we've done with everything else we've done. I'm just going to, as always, just a little toothpick. So anyway, I've got my glue placed, and because this is a magnet, I'm going to use the tip of a hobby knife to pick up the magnet and set it in place. Well, it worked, but surprise, surprise, it was a little more difficult than I expected it was going to be. The super glue didn't want to bond as fast as I had hoped that it would, and kept wanting to stick to the knife. So yeah, it took a couple of minutes to finally bond to the surface, but there, now we've got it. Next up, we've got a couple of we've got a photoetch grill to attach. That fits in there just fine. You can see that in the bottom of the channel there. It's calling for it to be a different color than the rest of it, so I'm not going to glue it in place just yet. In fact, I'm going to get rid of my my super glue over here carefully, so as to not glue myself to anything. Yeah, so I want to see how this all goes together before I glue anything too permanently. Because there's kind of some interesting arrangements of parts here. Anyway, next up we got part R15. Have I ever told you how clumsy I can be sometimes? See, this part, it's supposed to hinge against what we just assembled here. And I just broke one of the hinge pins. It's not fully broken off yet, so I should be able to put it back together with a little bit of glue if I'm very, very gentle. Alright, so I think I got that pretty much fixed. But it's going to be fragile, because a glued joint is never going to be as strong as the original joint would be. No matter what kind of adhesive you use, it's always going to be fragile. But I don't think I'm going to need to worry too much about it. I don't think it's like going to be a high stress position. Besides, I'll probably end up just gluing the entire structure in place rather than allowing it to hinge. Now, would I have done that before breaking this little hinge pin? Tough to say. But we'll leave that up to our imaginations. In any event, there's a couple of photoetch parts that get attached to that. Just some detail, just some detail parts that get attached to either side. So let's go ahead and carefully attach those. So I'm noticing that the part that we're supposed to attach these photoetch plates to has a very slight curve to it. So I'm going to have to produce a similar curve in the photoetch parts, or else they're not going to sit correctly. Now, just to create such a gentle curve, I'm actually going to use the body of my hobby knife, and I'm just going to gently anneal these against it, just to kind of put a gentle bend into it. And it's better to put less of one at first than too much, because you can always add a little more bend. It's hard to take bend away. So let's just do a test fit. And see, I've gone and put too much bend in, and now I've dropped the part. But it shouldn't be too hard to flatten out a little bit. Test fitting, as always, is very important. So that's one side done. Doesn't look quite so pretty, but it's done. And I can always clean it up with some sanding or filing later on. So I've got the second plate already bent into shape. What's interesting to note is that my blade seems to have picked up a slight residual magnetic charge from attaching the magnet to that first part. So that's actually making this a little bit easier. Hopefully it won't quite be as strong of a magnetic bond as it was before when I was actually attaching the magnet, so that the glue here will actually be strong enough to hold it in place. And look at that. I love it when a plan comes together. That one went down perfectly. It's almost like I actually know what I'm doing here. Our next up, we've just got this just tiny little square here. Fits over a small hole on the back side of this. So that'll be a piece of cake compared to what we've just done. Alright, so that little panel is now in place. We're going to have to let that set for a little while, though, because it's calling for a pin and a hinge to be mounted inside, and if I were to glue, or if I were to attach that now, the whole thing would just glue itself together, and we don't want that. So in the meantime, I'm just going to get started on some of the other smaller sub-assemblies. So in the meantime, while I've been letting the glue dry on this part, I've gone ahead and trimmed off all the other parts I'm going to need for the oil channel, oil cooler channel, as well as because I had the magnets out, I've gone and placed the magnets inside the body of the aircraft. You can see there's one in the engine compartment and another one kind of just by my finger there. The one in the nose, I believe, is going to be one of the cowl, engine cowling retention magnets, while this one on the behind the cockpit, I'm not really sure what purpose it serves, but it'll become a little more clear, I'm sure, as the build goes on. So where we are now is I've got, like I said, all of my parts trimmed off. Now we've got kind of a hinge axle kind of wacky mechanism we're going to be assembling here, and this is going to be kind of fun. I use the term fun very loosely because so far none of this photo etching has been particularly fun. First of all, we've got this kind of boat anchor shaped part that I need to insert through a hole in this little plate. I need to make sure that the plate is aligned correctly. I need to make sure that the part goes through the hole correctly. And then I went and dropped it. There it is. So there, once I have the kind of anchor-shaped part fit through the slot in that plate, I have to insert this little axle through a hole in that boat anchor. I know that's not what it is, that's just what I'm calling it because that's kind of what it looks like. And then I have to fit everything together very, very carefully inside of this part here, making sure that the axle fits into this channel and everything goes together correctly. There's no glue in there yet, but you can see that little anchor thing is free floating. So now I'm going to have to be extraordinarily careful in applying this glue because I do not want to lose the mobility on that little metal hinge. And hot damn, holy crap, I think I actually managed to pull it off. You can see it's still free floating in there and it's all securely glued together. God damn, sometimes I manage to impress even myself. So I think that's about as far as I can go for right now without painting it, because we've got a couple of radiator parts, those photoetched grills. They need to be painted a different color from the rest of the main body. The instructions are calling for this to be painted the fuselage color, which the instructions say AS12. And I'm not quite sure what color I'm going to use for the fuselage yet. I don't really like Tamiya's spray paints. I may end up using Tester's Metallics, because I've had some good luck with them so long as the parts have been primed first. But if you're trying to paint on bare plastic, you're not going to have a lot of luck. In the meantime, though, I'll paint the grills, and it looks like everything is fairly well designed enough that the grills can be inserted after everything else is painted, and then it all assembles together pretty easily. And then once that's done, I think there's just a couple of little tiny things to do, and then I can actually glue the fuselage together. Because the cockpit is done. Aside from painting the harnesses, as I said, the interior of the fuselage is done. The engine is done, though I've been looking back over my my handiwork on the scratch-built harnesses, and well, for one thing, I've done some test fitting, and I don't believe the top side harness is even going to fit. So it's probably going to have to come off. But I've heard that the tolerances, the fit tolerances on the engine cowlings, it's a little bit too finicky to you know, to me it was very well intentioned in trying to design them so that they could be popped on and off. But in actual practice, they're not really working out as well as they had hoped, from what I've heard. You know, if you don't glue them down, you get some misalignments. So your best bet is to either leave them off entirely or glue them down entirely. And I'm kind of going towards gluing them down. In which case, all my hard work on doing this engine up is going to go to waste. But you know, this is my first. This is really my first aircraft of this difficulty level, and I don't want to make it any harder than it has to be. Especially considering that I'm, you know, going so sluggishly on it in the first place, having taken a couple of, well, basically the last month off to play Mass Effect. But I'm happy to be getting back to it, even if it is just slowly, sluggishly, you know, one piece at a time. I will get it done, sooner or later. So like I said, though, there's just a couple of little things left to do, and then I think I'm pretty much going to be close to ready to button it up. And then I'll get work on, I get to work on the wings, and the gun bays inside the wings, the landing gear bays, etc., etc. So for now, I think that's where I'll leave you. Thanks everyone out there for watching, and happy modeling.